All right. We are in. No, that's not what I want. I want to just press this button. Artifacts. Artifacts, not constellations, but this. Let's go kill Padilla. Multiple times. Excellent connection. Thank you for getting my hopes up. And let's listen to videos which are about this. I want to eat something. Watch. Or drink, more like. Yes, drink something that is tasty. Unfortunately, I only have yogurt.
Accurate for what the initiative was actually aiming to do. He finally set the record straight, and I of course wanted to talk about it as someone who does actually care about it. Now, as I've said, I've been a little more off the grid. I bought a fucking farm, so I've been, you know, living off the Lord's land recently, and I've missed a lot of the internet happenings. So Pirate Software's previous anime arcs of drama, like with World of Warcraft, and the one after that, and the one after
that was a great drama arc.
After that, and the one after that, and the one after that. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to. I only got little tiddlywinks, little.
I only cared about the WoW drama personally. I love the WoW drama. I still stand with the opinion that he shouldn't have roached out.
Morsels of lore about it in a few clips, so I never really even understood what was going on there. So Pirate Software's response to everything that happened yesterday really caught me by surprise. That was a subversion of my expectations, bigger than Game of Thrones Season 8.
Yeah, Hutcher, I did. I think it's really hilarious to me that that entire community is so butt mad at me for putting out a video 10 months ago about their stuff. And then not being refuted, and now it's my fault that everything is going wrong for them.
I cannot believe his ego. His ego.
This guy has like millions of Twitter. Not Twitter, like, is it? Pirate Software, YouTube. How many millions of subscribers? 2.5 million subscribers. That's a lot.
Ego is so out of control, I feel like he's only a week or two away from exclusively referring to himself in third person, like Stone Cold fucking Steve Austin. And that's the truth, because Pirate Software said so. Some shit like that. It's crazy how he's responded. The smugness is nails on a chalkboard. It just makes you feel icky listening to it. And he goes on that same talking point multiple times in the clip about how, like, oh, I guess I'm fully to blame. I guess because I made those videos 10 months ago, it's my fault entirely that this whole thing crashed and burned. Yep. Oh boy. Time to play a sad song on the world's smallest violin for the Stop Killing Games movement, all because Big Bad Pirate Software took it all down by himself. Like, it's
just because you say it sarcastically doesn't mean that you are going to be held less accountable. I'll say that, Jared.
Crazy. No one's saying that. Like, there is no one out there that is saying it is entirely Pirate Software's fault that Stop Killing Games hasn't been more successful in its endeavors. But there's irrefutable evidence that you had a detrimental effect, a majorly damaging effect on Stop Killing Games because of your misinformation that you spread about it in 2 videos and across all your streams, and not once have you bothered to correct that record. And he has said that it hasn't been refuted in 10 months.
No. You want to know why? Because he doesn't think he's wrong. He just thinks that he shouldn't be held accountable for perhaps, you know, affecting it. Yeah, if you backpedal on it, you lose ego, you lose ground. I'm never wrong, chat.
That is fish paste. That is turbo horseradish. Go to your own comment section on your videos to see everyone refuting you, as well as the innumerable other gamers and voices out there that have taken down those talking points and debunked a lot of them and proven that you just didn't understand it. And that is the big problem. No one hates Pirate Software because he doesn't agree with Stop Killing Games. The reason so many people are angry at him, myself included here, you can disagree with the movement all you want. If you don't like the initiative, I'm not your fucking dad. You make your own choices there. But the reason so many people, myself included, do not like how Pirate Software is handling all this is he is refusing, outright refusing, to just admit any level of fault, that he was wrong about anything. And that couldn't be more clear from these clips as well as his tweets that he's made. It's actually his tweets that really sent me off the fucking rails here, off my gourd.
He tweets a lot, I'll give you that. I follow him on Twitter and there's a lot of essaying.
Start with this little nugget here that he deleted from last night. So he tweeted directly at Ross, the guy behind Stop Killing Games, talking about how he made those videos 10 months ago, and since then his community has been nothing but hateful, a scourge, a fucking tyrannid threat that he must destroy.
Okay, but hold on, you have 2.5 million subscribers on YouTube alone. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like there's bigger fish that would make a bigger impact. Yeah.
Our community is fucking rabid, and it's shit to deal with for anyone on the other side of the argument. Why do you think I haven't talked about this shit in 10 months? Why do you think we auto-mute anyone bringing it up in chat? Because it's been rage bait and shit flinging the entire time. And just goes on about like how he is the victim of Ross's toxic, terrible community, which is hilariously hypocritical coming from Pirate Software, when in his videos and his streams, he makes it very clear and is very rude about how much he dislikes not only Ross, but the movement. And it's not like he's being very professional and polite about it, you know, buttoned up. Listen to it.
So this was my first encounter with him.
Not bad.
Oh shit, no, this is actually really dumb. It's used car salesman garbage. This is shit. It's shit.
Shall not yield.
Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to.
Let's stir things up. Let's ride.
Damn.
That is awful.
Damn.
That is a horrible goddamn direction. That's awful, dude. No, eat my entire ass. The level of stupid that I just had to receive was like sitting on Twitter for 12 hours. This shit sucks. That's a really stupid ass move. That's incredibly stupid ass move. I think this is ass.
Manifest.
This is complete garbage.
I remember we talked about this very briefly, like, I don't know, a year ago maybe less. I thought the initiative was fine. Maybe I'm retarded. I don't know. I'm not a colder. I'm not smart. I'm also a female. What do I know?
All of this can eat shit, then. I dropped the mask entirely.
Jesus Christ!
I have no qualms about that.
Why is he so vicious about it? Jeez!
Eat my entire ass. The whole thing. That sounds stupid as shit.
Yeah, I'm sure it's Ross and his community that are actually the assholes here. Brother, come on, you can't possibly be calling the wambulance with a side of French fries here about people being mean to you when you are literally the one that started the shit-flinging and name-calling. And by the way, Ross never even addressed this for 10 months because he didn't want to dilute the initiative into just having it be boiled down to drama between creators, which I think was actually very big of him. The only reason he's talking about it now is because it's at the end of its life, and so many people still don't understand it because of someone like Pirate Software misrepresenting it. So it's finally setting.
You have a massive influence on the gaming sphere. Like, let's not get it twisted. I think everybody's gotten a Pirate Software short recommended to them at some point, even if you don't like them. Bro, sounds like you just got tunneled on DPD. Actually, though, he sounds really, really mad.
The record straight there. Anyway, he did delete that tweet, but just a little while ago, he made a new tweet, a very long tweet, as well as a series of tweets under it in regards to this whole thing. And in all these words, all this mumbo jumbo, not once does he say he was wrong about anything. In fact, he just continues to double down, even proudly stating he is doubling down. Wow, how incredibly noble.
For those that will scream he's doubling down, yes, I am damn well am. I give a shit about this initiative and what it means for games, developers, and players in the future. But okay, I'm not gonna act like I know everything about this. I'm gonna let Charlie cook and then I'll throw in my 2 cents.
Well, doubling down on things you are provably, blatantly wrong about. We don't need to hit the Jumbotron for the replay on yesterday's video going over
like
so many of the things that he was incorrect about in regards to the initiative. But the point is, that is an issue that I really thought that he would address. Be like, hey, yeah, I did get this part wrong. You're right, guys. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to misrepresent it. I still don't fully agree with it, but I do recognize that I had some errors here in my coverage. That's what I was expecting. That is not what we got. And it prompted me to reach out directly to him, to talk to him, to see, like, why isn't he acknowledging that? Is there a reason? Like, what is going on there? So I did. He made it very clear he was not very happy with my coverage of Stop Killing Games, which is fine. I think that's totally fine. I'm not going to leak DMs or really go in depth on our private conversation, but the point of me reaching out to him was to talk about his refusal to acknowledge that he did, maybe unintentionally, misrepresent Stop Killing Games.
No!
And it led to a just shy...
Pirate League DMs from his side, by the way. After this video... It's a wee bit cringe, isn't it? That's really cringe. After he's... Oh my god, the freeze frame. I'm sorry, Charlie. But, like, after this video came out... It's kind of weird.
2 hours, like, circular argument that ultimately got us nowhere. He was more focused on his qualms with Stop Killing Games and really liked to challenge me to prove him wrong about some of his hang-ups with it. And when I would mention, like, the behavior aspect, like, hey, you did misrepresent it, and I'd give him a timestamp, he'd then instead say how I'm wrong for thinking that he misrepresented it. We got nowhere. So I want to just publicly say this again. There are plenty of things you can disagree with when it comes to the Stop Killing Games initiative. I'll put links to it if you want to learn more about it. You can form your own opinions on it if you want to support it. If you don't like it, that's fine. That's super normal. And I didn't reach out to try and champion that Pirate Software should become, you know, a huge ambassador of Stop Killing Games, you know?
Well, if you objectively, incorrectly present an idea, you automatically lose. Dude, I'm so bad at freeze framing. I'm sorry, Charlie. I'm genuinely, this is not intentional. But what I'm trying to say is... Okay, there we go. It's a little bit better. I'm sorry, it's not intentional. What do they say?
Way ahead.
You can't be a lawyer arguing for a side and then say, no, this evidence doesn't exist. This is the evidence that I have. And then the judge is like, what the fuck? Like, this isn't even real. Like, this didn't happen. You are objectively wrong. It's not about opinion at this point.
Out there on the fucking front lines fighting for it. It had nothing to do with that. It was simply about the misunderstanding that he showcased, maybe unintentionally, and the misrepresentation of it that he broadcast. Again, maybe unintentionally, which has in turn, over the course of 10 months, misled people on what the fuck Stop Killing Games even is in the first place. Which I found to be a problem because he's never even acknowledged that as something that has happened. And because he refuses to acknowledge that, and anyone that even, like,
Well, that's kind of what happened also, for those that actually care about WoW and stuff, but after the fact, when all the emotions settled down, after he basically wiped the raid and roached out, some people missed the part where he got into a call with a bunch of people and they said, like, why can't you just admit that you made a mistake? Like, we all made a mistake. We admitted it to each other. And then you just roached out again and said, bye, fuck you, I don't want to talk to you, you're trying to put the blame on me. And we're like, as in they, the people that he was in the dungeon with. And then he got even more upset and said, no, this isn't what happened, I'm never gonna take accountability because you guys are a bunch of fucking losers and you're trying to put it on me. And we're like, what? Like, that to me, after all that shit, like, fine, you roached out. It's kind of the same principle here. It's like you couldn't even admit that you fucked up, like, even a little bit, like a modicum of accountability. It's a little bit weird.
Toes around that subject, he kind of treats as though they're fucking idiots, like me, for thinking that he's misrepresented something. Now, he did just post a tweet where he said he talked to me and Josh Strife Hayes, and in that tweet, this will prove how useless our conversation was, unfortunately, there's not a single peep about misrepresenting what Stop Killing Games was about. It's more so about how the public just doesn't understand game development, and it kind of reads to me like we're all just too stupid.
Why is he dying on this hill over this? Does he think it's gonna, like, hurt him as a quote-unquote game developer or something? This is such a weird hill to die on.
Understand it from his side of things.
And I like Josh Strife Hayes. I like that guy. He's got a good head on his shoulders.
Things. Our conversation basically
as far as I know, anyway.
Unfortunately. Again, I was focused on you have done this, maybe unintentionally. You should at least say that you have, or like, you know, are you aware that you did this? And then it became more of like, nope, I didn't. You're wrong. And then he uses our conversation at the start of this for something that was not even the focus. I was not there to try and convince him to be part of Stop Killing Games. I don't think we made any...
and misrepresenting what the other party wants. Very, very strange behavior.
Ground on like his perspective versus mine on Stop Killing Games. He has some qualms about how difficult it would be in certain cases. I agree with that, for sure. I still think overall Stop Killing Games is a net positive for the gaming industry where something desperately needs to change with a lot of these awful practices. But for the 10 millionth time in the last 2.5 hours, it was just about him having this awareness that his coverage did mislead people, and that he, maybe not maliciously or anything, misunderstood or misrepresented Stop Killing Games in numerous instances, and the way that he talked about Ross was unacceptable. That at least made it into the tweet there about the way he talked about Ross being like a fucking used car salesman type deal, and like calling everything about it ass. He at least recognized that that was too harsh, so he gave a quick I'm sorry for that.
But he didn't say he was wrong, he said it was too harsh.
Good. I do appreciate that, and I'm sure Ross will appreciate that as well, I imagine.
Surely.
But I still wanted to make this video after the conversation because I just really do not understand. I truly cannot wrap my head around why he fights tooth and nail coming for throats for anyone that tries to mention that there was misrepresentation in his coverage of the Stop Killing.
Because it admits that he's wrong. I've met many people like that. Like, guys, if you have like a professional job, have you ever met someone like that that just doesn't want to admit that they're wrong? Not even like after emotions are settled and they'll be like, okay, I'm sorry, I got really, really mad and emotional, and they'll be like, I'm sorry, I actually made a mistake. I'm not talking about like your girlfriend or anything, like a job or something. Yeah, my CEO. CEOs are usually psychopaths, did you know that? Yeah, because they have to put everyone else beneath them and like profit first. That's a perfect way to find a psychopath. And I mean that like an actual psychopath, like a clinical.
Games Initiative. He is so hell-bent on proving he's right and everyone else is wrong that's saying these things. I just don't get it. He's just treating it like he's got the mega mind, once-in-a-generation galaxy brain that no one can possibly understand. All us plebeians are beneath him, and we're lucky that he even graces us with streams, and we're stupid for thinking that...
Yeah, and also the other thing that I don't really like about him saying certain stuff is that if you aren't an expert coder, you basically aren't allowed to have like an argument or anything to do. Like if you aren't a game dev, a coder, or a game developer or whatever, you're not allowed to have an opinion. And it's like, that's not how the real world works, buddy. Like, it's kind of, what a stupid thing to say. Yeah, exactly.
He did anything wrong here in regards to this coverage of Stop Killing Games and what it's actually about. It's just so odd to me. Because if he would just come out and be like, yeah, you know what, looking back on it, really reflecting, hearing what you guys are saying, I can see why this was so misleading for so many people. I didn't mean for it to be, and yeah, maybe I misunderstood some of these things. This would not have been nearly as big of a deal as it was turned into. And I went back and looked at some of his previous dramas, I suppose, and that is a common thread with pirate software. Like in World of Warcraft, he made a mistake, but he completely refused to acknowledge the mistake, and it made it a much bigger snowball into an avalanche for him, which led to a ton of other problems. He just has this inability to, like...
People keep citing and saying, look at the Dr. K and him interview, and I'm like, I'm very well aware of it, man. That one was crazy. Like, again, people like Dr. K, and they can say he's not like 100% a doctor or whatever, he's just doing it for clout and attention. That's fine. But if you actually listen to the opinion and the words, like, in the interview, was, like, insane.
Except that he can make mistakes. Like, he does things wrong sometimes. And he needs to recognize that it's okay to be like, yeah, I did do that wrong. You're right. I was incorrect in this. And it would save so much of a headache. But he just comes across as a narcissist. He really does, unfortunately. Like, I'm not an armchair Reddit psychologist here gonna diagnose him as a narcissist or anything, but like, that's what it comes across as. He just refuses to admit that he ever...
It's just like the basic Redditor moment, to be honest.
does anything incorrectly. It admits no faults of his own, ever. Except, I suppose, to Ross here, which maybe this is the beginning of a big character development for Pirate Software. He did apologize to Ross for how he treated him and what he said about him. I think that's great. Would love to see that same kind of energy for understanding where people like myself are coming from with your coverage of Stop Killing Games and why people feel the way they do about what's happened since with your responses. But anyway, I won't keep yapping about it. That's really about it. So, yeah.
That's always see it. Alright, presents to solve a puzzle game and he has more vested interest in making.
Right idea.
Primer pretended to solve a puzzle in a game on his own with only 80 hours playtime that took a community a week to solve. So he cheated. But why? Again, there's nothing wrong with being like, oh, well, this puzzle's really hard, I'm gonna look it up. But, like, why? Was it Animal Well? Wait, that game was actually really good, apparently. The Dr. K video? Oh my god, Chad recommended it to me. We're on it for all 3 hours. I'm just kidding, I'm not gonna do that. That's crazy work. That's sad, I don't know. He also filed a false takedown against an indie game dev. Yes, someone was trying to like lecture me and say, oh, Alana, he didn't do that. It's like, actually he did. Someone criticized him and he filed a DMCA. Yeah, just to fuck him over. And by the way, DMCAing on YouTube is horrible. Like, your entire channel gets fucked on it until they basically lift it or you fight it off.
Come on, let's go find some drama.
Let's go find some drama. Wow. Months ago. No, I don't want to watch all the video on this topic, but there are this. Yes, where is it? Here it is.
Things, but there's all sorts of support for that from the community. But so the industry has been kind of normalizing where you buy the game the same way as previous ones, you keep it, and then just at an undisclosed time period, they turn the server off, and because you have to connect to the publisher, the game's bricked. You can never run it again, and they keep your money though. So it's not like a service where, well, a few games are, like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, where they tell you exactly when your access ends. You pay for a month or pay for 6 months. Okay, and that's kind of, I want to say until about 2004, pretty much every single video game made was one of those two categories. Either you're told how long it lasts, or you get to keep it and run it indefinitely. And this practice where they take away the ownership, or effective ownership, I guess, it's driven me up the wall because that's led to more games effectively destroyed that you can never run again than any other practice. I mean, there's all sorts of obscure, games for, Commodore, mentioned Atari, that we've managed to preserve them one way or another, but meanwhile, there's this black hole of games starting from, the mid-2000s up until now, and it's only getting worse. And the thing about this is, unfortunately in the US, this is pretty locked down legally. But in many other countries, especially the EU and Australia, this was never really tested legally. Companies just did it, and nobody really stopped them. And the laws were never really written for this kind of situation.
I think because it's about video games, it's easier for people to be dismissive of some of the concerns, especially if they're not really attached to games the same way. And I think the best kind of way I have to reframe why it's important is this is kind of an extension of you'll own nothing, you know, and you'll be happy.
I think it's the front lines.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, a lot of, you know, lawmakers or important people in general, you're right, they don't really, usually the only time video games come up are either whether
Violence.
Targeting stuff to children that they're worried about, or gambling, you know, where it might be running. That's pretty much it. So, I mean, I can understand that this does get passed over, but no, that is a theory I've heard, that this could be kind of testing grounds to see what people will tolerate. I think the best real-world example of what's happening in video games would be printers, where, you know, you bought a printer, it works, but because the driver to connect to the server doesn't work, okay, now it's bricked and doesn't work, even though it's
DRM for printers.
Yeah, exactly. There's several cases of that. You know, I think printers are the closest real-world object equivalent of what's going on.
I guess if you could briefly describe what point are you at in the process for Stop Killing Games, because this is an initiative where you're actually trying to go through the legal system to get something done.
Oh, yeah. We've done a lot of stuff where, because I tried to attack on all cylinders on this. So we did this in two basic ways. One was there was a perfect test case for this, a game called The Crew by Ubisoft, where they shut it down and it just checked off every box for this being a good case for consumer agencies to look at. And we managed to get complaints on that.
Most people hate dealing with the messy side of life, but that's because they don't see the fun in it. Here's an example. Imagine two young people have a crush on each other, and both are too shy to tell the other how they feel, for fear it's not reciprocal. Maybe it's been that way for a long time. With just a little pre-planning, I can arrange it so that they just so happen to find themselves sitting next to each other during a choir performance. Both try to steal a glance at the other. They lock eyes and start blushing. Moments like that are a huge part of the reason why I became a deacon.
What a place.
Neat. Surprise. Baptism. Surprise, Moses. Well, that's enough. Days, 6 hours. Oh.
Do you hear that? There's a voice whispering.
That filed in France, Germany, and Australia. We're still waiting on a decision, which is probably a good sign, because if we had no rights on this, then they could tell us that pretty quickly. We have lots of things underway with government or that we've exhausted. The other big way that we've been doing this is trying to propose law to governments on this through government petitions, or the big one now is the European Citizens Initiative. That's kind of the crown jewel of all this, where if we can get enough signatures on that, I think we end this. Now, the two ones we have active right now are European Citizens Initiative, which are open to anyone in the EU, or from any citizen of an EU country. It doesn't matter where you live, but you have to be a citizen. And the UK. our odds are worse in the UK, but it is an option that they do have a process to bring it before Parliament.
And so these two things, so these are forms that people can sign. The EU Citizens Initiative is an actual EU process, like it's an actual legal process, and requires 1 million signatures with some sub-requirements, so there needs to be a certain amount in different given countries. Currently, you're up at around 542,000 of the 1 million or so required. When you made your video, and I guess if you captured the footage a little before that, maybe within the last week or so, your screen capture had it at 453,000, so nearing another 100,000. I guess first of all, for anyone in the audience who you care about this issue, just pause right now, and I'll have the links in the description. If you're in the UK, there's a separate link. If you're in the EU, that's the one it sounds like the kind of big focus is on the Citizens Initiative. But yeah, I was looking into it, and there's sort of Wikipedia lists 6 cases that have kind of gone through this process. There's some really serious things on this. Right to water, which I think the name's pretty self-explanatory.
Thankfully, I don't think we're beating that. that would yeah, that's the goal. I hope not. I hope not.
That would be a different concern. How did you find out about this process? Because I don't think this was your first avenue, right? This has been going for a while now.
It was a long, winding road of researching options. We lost an entire month basically chasing down dead ends for this, where we would call agencies or volunteers would in those countries. And then we would just, from the same agency, we would get different answers. Some would say, well, no, you signed the license agreement, they can do whatever they want. Others saying, well, no, I think that means they have to run it indefinitely. And one in Germany said there is no clear legal regulation on this. There's the ECC, the Consumer Network,
yeah.
But it's all a blur in my head how many pages I looked at trying to. It's like doing a 400 level college research paper project or something like that. This is basically a mechanism for the citizenry to tell government, hey, we have a problem, please address this. And there's a lot of requirements to get it launched. Like you can't just put anything like everybody should have flying cars or something. That would get thrown out. And you have to include directives that show they have the authority to act on this. So you can't just say, ban UK's football team that we don't like or something. You can't even get it open for signing without passing several checks, essentially.
Okay.
And if we get the signatures, then it goes to the EU Commission, and then it essentially becomes kind of a fact-finding evaluation. I wouldn't say like a court case, but they're going to try and get information from all sides on this. So they'll hear from the industry, they'll hear from developers, hear from customers, that sort of thing. And then everybody would be able to kind of say their piece, and then the EU Commission would decide, okay, what's reasonable or not. And the reason I'm so optimistic is because of that kind of hole in the law I mentioned earlier, where there just aren't clear terms on this already. So if we're coming in just asking for basic consumer rights that are in line with all kinds of other products, I think we would either win, or this would just look really bad for a lot of politicians, like a international news level that they wouldn't want.
You've somewhat, I don't know if I don't want to attribute the wrong phrase to it, but I feel like you have maybe like a half joke slide about being an easy win, easy political victory for politicians.
Yeah, because from the politician standpoint, okay, politicians like to get things passed, so they can, have a victory lap, but they don't want things that are like really controversial or going to give them a lot of heat, or in trouble with their constituency. So, I mean, if you compare this to like something like immigration policies, or maybe something popular, like unpopular, like raising taxes on something, that's not a fun. That's not a fun one for them to engage in if they don't have to, or if they're not sure the numbers. But this, like we said earlier, a lot of government doesn't care about video games in the first place, And really, a lot of their constituency might not either. And this is pro-consumer, so this could be relatively easy for politicians to pass because, I mean, it's not a free win exactly, but the winds are blowing in the right direction for it. That's the way I would put it.
So on the technical side, I guess we can get into that. Your video does a good job of talking about this recently, but I think some of the first line of defense arguments you would have against some kind of video game preservation when there are elements that require server connectivity, the first thing a developer might oppose with that is you could strawman it and say, well, we're not giving away our source code. That's our intellectual property. That's crazy. We're not gonna, we close the game, but that's kind of a misconception we could talk about. Another one might be that just on a pure technical level or maybe a financial feasibility level, you could strawman it a different way and say, well, to expect us to re-architect a game because we're suffering financially and we have to shut it down, therefore we have to invest even more money into it to save it. You know, like, I think those to me seem like the easiest arguments. How do you confront this?
It may not be an intentional straw man. I mean, it's easy to understand where people can get hung up on this. I'd say the very first point I would emphasize is that the initiative is not retroactive. It wouldn't be even if we wanted to. So we're talking about games and practices in the future. I think even if this passed, I think a really fast implementation would probably be 2 years minimum, but it could probably be longer than that. So, yeah, that's the first thing to acknowledge is let's talk about games in the future first.
Right.
That's the first framing. The second, like you mentioned, they don't. Well, first, we would not be requiring them to give out source code under any scenario. But let's say something like server binaries or something like that. See, for a lot of games right now, if they were never designed for something like this, it could be they don't have the rights from the company that they're using the middleware from, or have some microservice connected to that. They can't legally give this out even if they wanted to because of existing deals. So for how those games would be handled, I mean, like right now, that would be in the EU Commission's hands, but I'd say the only two options, if they just can't rework it or if it's just too costly, could be that they could shut it down before the law went into effect. So, we're talking a couple years down the line. Or it could be that during the compromise process, the EU decides, okay, this is too disruptive to just do all at once like this. We're going to grandfather in everybody who's selling games before this date. Mm-hmm. So in other words, okay, since you were selling your game before 2028 or something, you get a free ride for this game. You will not be subject to these regulations, but any games that start getting sold after that date, that's when it kicks in. And from that point, I would emphasize developers to just start focusing on it, like just from the design phase onwards. So, nothing's been written yet. You're just figuring out how you're going to code this. And it could be, a lot of things could have to change depending on the game. It could be that, again, like for middleware or microservices, you might have to renegotiate with those vendors that you used to get things from, just so you have enough rights to allow an end-of-life build.
For the microservices and middleware vendors, any quick examples you could throw out there of not necessarily specific companies, but types of game systems that might use these?
I was thinking with The Crew.
Yeah.
That's a game that also used copyrighted music and name brand car licenses, which they might have said, okay, you can't sell it after this date.
Right.
And I've never heard of a deal like that stopping the user to continue playing the game after that date. That's the difference. But let's say the deal was only for the client to have that, and those car models are in the server code somewhere. Right. That deal was never made, so they can't do it. So, but in the future, if you want to make a new car game and you're negotiating with Porsche or something, then they would know that, if they want to sell this game in the EU, which has 450 million people in it, we have to allow, we have to add an extra little clause that, okay, we can release.
And alright, that's going to be it for the stream. Good luck, have fun, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. And also, yeah, sign the petition if you can. If you're willing to. See ya.